Now, it might feel like you've missed the boat and things might be a little bit over when it comes to making that change and moving to Calgary. Well, in reality, there are still a lot of options. There are still a lot of places. There are still opportunities for you. So don't have that FOMO, because I want you to meet a couple who did move here 3 years ago, and they're going to tell their story. What they love about Calgary, what they don't love about Calgary. They're going to talk about why they came here initially, and is their journey actually setting out along the path that they wanted it to look like? Well, all of those things are going to be great conversations today. And if you're in that similar boat where you have questions, you want to figure things out, you don't know how to do it, and you're trying to make that change to Calgary and you're looking for a home, well, let us know, because we are able to do this and help you, because we've helped hundreds of people move here to Calgary. And so I want to introduce you to Vineet and Khushbu. You're going to love them. So let's go jump into that. Since the last time you guys were here, a lot has happened. Has it not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our lives have changed.
Your lives have changed. For the better?
For the better.
There. Yeah,
100% the better.
That's good. So why don't we jump in and kind of hear a little bit, if you want to get people caught up, they may not have watched the first video you guys were on a couple of years ago. But how long have you been living in Calgary now?
It's been almost 3 years. We moved in May 2021.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll be 3 years next month.
Okay. And what was that initial change like? Do you remember the nervousness, the feelings? Like, what were some of those things that you guys were feeling and thinking when you made that initial move?
The biggest thing for us was leaving behind our entire lives. All of the friends that we knew in Toronto and coming to a completely new city. And basically starting anew, like finding a new place, making new friends, and being just able to visualize what that would look like. Because we were certain we wanted to start a family and wanted a larger home that we could afford for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you find that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thanks to no less thanks to you and Rebecca. But we were able to find the home we wanted literally on the first day that we arrived.
Yeah.
And so that was helpful.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as nervous. Like for her, it was a much bigger deal because she had way more friends. She still does than I do. I guess it's something about her being
friends, like, or her friend's husband.
Kind of, yeah. Actually, a lot of the times that's the case. And so I wasn't really worried about leaving all of those people behind. I still miss them, but it's been a step in the right direction for us, I think.
So what were some of the family and friends back home? What were some of their initial reactions to you guys making this change?
A lot of them were nervous on our behalf because everyone knows of Toronto. Again, me and Vineet, both of our families hail from India, and we still have a lot of family or friends in India. And for them, Calgary is not a very well-known city. And at the same time, most of our friends who are in Toronto would usually consider Calgary as like a vacation spot. You go there to go to Banff and Jasper, but not as a place that someone would think of to live in. Yeah. So there was a lot of nervousness from their end. But it made sense for us because professionally, we both work in remote jobs. We both work in the software industry. And so we were never really tied to a place. So, yeah, a lot of it had to do with just the perception of Calgary, especially for folks who had never been here before.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that our friends used to ask us, well, how are you going to survive the cold? Right?
Yeah.
You're going to some place that's always going to be freezing. And I think a lot of them don't realize that winters here are colder, yes, but they're different. They're not what you would imagine them to be.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And and it's been interesting because now this wave of people moving here has been going on for a couple of years. So that initial pushback that I've always heard from those that watch and reach out, what is the weather like? What's the weather like? And now I think you guys, as well as others who have moved here, are reporting back and being like, hey, this actually isn't that bad, right? Like, I found it colder in Toronto in the winter when you're right by the water. Yeah. Like, especially when you're in Toronto, than ever in Calgary. So I think that's quite hilarious in some ways.
Yeah.
Like, we see snow, but we don't feel the cold.
That's
where you
right.
feel cold, but you don't always see snow there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was actually pleasantly surprised our first winter here, because in Toronto, I used to live in downtown by the water. And moving here, I knew that it was going to be colder, but it's drier and there's a lot more sunshine. So you're less depressed. And it's actually not too bad to go outside or do outdoor activities even in the winter. Compared to Toronto, where you'd have like wet snow, it'd be slushy and not the most pleasant.
So have any of the relationships changed from family and friends that were back there because you're physically further apart?
Yeah, I think they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Like, because we used to go to visit our friends pretty much every weekend. We'd either be hanging out at their place or we'd have friends come over to ours.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's no longer the case. And one of the other things is that last time when we spoke, I think one of our biggest reasons for moving to Calgary was to start a family.
Yeah.
And so we did.
Yeah.
Right. And so now, because you were speaking of relationships with family, now we have new relationships that we never even had before with our kids.
Right.
So,
And I think knowing, because our girls are 10 years, or I guess 14 years ahead of yours than your kids. But I remember being in your stage of life, your friends are now turning out to be the ones from preschool or daycares, or and you're starting to try to build these new friendships. So naturally, that probably would have changed a lot of the friendships that you had in Toronto anyways.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think had we started a family in Toronto, you're right, our friendships would have changed regardless.
So I want to hear more about the family, because that's exciting, because you've got good news. But I want to go back. What were some of the things in the last 2 years that you have found, or 3 years, because you've been here longer, were really different? So activities, things that you guys did, maybe it changed your routine. Maybe you're going out to nature more. Just things that have changed now that you've been here for 3 years that you probably wouldn't have engaged in when you were in Toronto.
I think the biggest contrast for me has been how many outdoor activities we do now on a weekly basis or even on a daily basis. So like going out on walks, the fact that Calgary has so many parks within the city, and where we live, Banff and Canmore are not that far. They're just a 30, 45-minute drive, which is fantastic because you can go on hikes. And those would be the kind of activities that we would not usually engage in Toronto, because it would require us driving out at least 2-3 hours in traffic. And so that has been great.
And you only made it 10 kilometers in the 2 hours.
Yeah. And so we went out biking, hiking. We've been doing a lot more of, we did whitewater rafting for the first time.
Oh, wow.
After moving here.
Where did you do that?
It was near Golden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kicking horse.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Kicking horses. Well, yeah.
That's such a beautiful drive.
Yeah.
To head out to Golden and around Stoke.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if we didn't have any plans on weekends, we'd just drive up towards Banff and pick any spot on the highway, and we'd usually bring along our coffee or some snacks, and we'd just hang in the car or even outside.
There's so many lookout spots, right?
There really are.
Area, and they're all awesome.
Yeah.
So we've often just parked our car and had a little picnic when we didn't have the kids.
Have you gone out towards Kananaskis that way too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually went just a few days ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
We went to Mount Lorette Ponds, or Loretta. Yeah. Forget the name, but
I guess Lorette. I think.
Yeah. I think it's Lorette. We'll
rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah. But anyway, it was great.
Cool.
Her parents are here right now.
Yeah.
They're visiting from wow.
They just came in a week ago.
So
Is this their first time?
No.
I've been here a few times.
Yeah.
In Calgary, yeah.
Already.
So actually, this is a good question. What is their perception? Because if they were nervous, we know what Toronto is, and now they're looking at it how do they view Calgary differently?
They love it here. My dad was not happy to leave the last time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because, again, my parents are from Mumbai.
Okay.
And Mumbai is super congested, very loud. There's a lot of people. And so for them being here in and having like peace and quiet and like so much greenery outside that you get to enjoy. They really like that. Like they like that we're able to live in a somewhat slower pace of life and actually enjoy it rather than having to deal with traffic and commute and the constant loud noises. So they love it here.
That's cool.
From what I hear, like Mumbai is like Toronto on steroids.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like in terms of traffic and in terms of just the population density,
Yeah.
it's way up there.
Wow. Did you ever live there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's where you're from.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you came?
I was 22.
Oh, so like
Yeah.
you lived
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the way into my adulthood, and then I moved to Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was that a big reason to go to Toronto? Was because of the size or just knowing the name?
It was also because I had one of my cousins there, so I had one person who I knew, who I could
All of
count on
Canada.
in all of Canada. And I knew that Toronto was similar to Mumbai, so it wouldn't be too much of a change. And I also was coming here as a brand new immigrant who was looking for jobs. And so I knew that Toronto was one of the hubs for finding a job. Back then, I used to work in the financial industry and then eventually moved out and into the tech industry. But I was told that at least for finance jobs, Toronto was the best place to be. Yeah.
That's cool. So with your positive relocation experience coming to Calgary, have you encouraged others to also do the same? Or have you seen them move?
I haven't seen anyone move, not from our close friends at least. And initially, I would tell people if you want to move, again, Calgary is not for everyone.
No.
Some people have a certain lifestyle that they want. We obviously wanted to start a family and we wanted that bigger space and all that kind of stuff. We wanted a backyard and things like that for kids to grow up in, but not everyone wants the same thing.
Yeah.
And so even now, I wouldn't really encourage others to do the same. I'd tell them to keep an open, mind about Calgary.
Yeah.
That is indeed what they want.
Yeah.
But if it's not, then there's no point coming here.
Totally.
Right?
So what do you think is, who is Calgary not for? Now being here longer, right?
Yeah. Well, again, I've not lived in downtown Calgary, so I don't know how that kind of lifestyle compares. I think it might be actually pretty similar to downtown Toronto in some ways. But since we've moved here, we've always lived out in the suburbs. And it almost immediately after moving here, within a year or so, we started our family. And so it's been very different. So
So you never tried living your Toronto life in Calgary?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it was a very intentional, life is changing, so let's change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe if we would have been able to afford in the GTA region, somewhere out in the suburbs, like a bigger property, we might have stayed.
Yeah.
Even that's doubtful, though. I
yeah,
really
'cause
like
it
Calgary now. Because
What you guys paid, it was like 3 times. Essentially, right?
But apart from the price, there's a lot other benefits that we found, just like Khushbu was, talking about when it comes to being more closer to nature. And having things like the mountains more accessible with all the outdoor activities. So I think that would still be, kind of not unachievable, but definitely would be a bigger hurdle if we were living in the GTA.
And also other things like the crime rate, the school ratings, all of that seemed to just be better in Calgary in general. There are obviously going to be neighborhoods that don't make the cut. But in general, what we found, even when we were looking, because initially when we were interested in looking for a home, we did search a lot in Toronto as well as the surrounding areas, and it would just never compare with what was available in Calgary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to hear about your family. I want to hear, because you came here intentionally to make that change. So what's happened in the last 2 or 2.5 years?
We welcomed our daughter 18 months ago. She's now 18 months old. She's a toddler. She runs around and she is very, very talkative. And the best thing that we were able to see that we were able to give her is just the amount of space. Like she loves running around in the backyard. She enjoys the porch in the front of the home. Our neighborhood is pretty quiet.
Yeah.
So she's usually free to roam around and make
She's
friends.
the loudest.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the loudest.
We get noise complaints 3 houses down. I'm just kidding.
But there's so many other kids of similar age or even like, within that same age group that taking her to a park means that she always has some of the other friends to like hang out with and play with. So we've actually been able to see it in front of our eyes that the decisions that we took are actually working in her favor.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's probably a great feeling as a parent too.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And we have our second one on the way now.
Amazing. Almost literally within days.
Within days.
Within days.
Yeah.
So do you know if it's a boy or girl? That's the thing everyone asks, right?
Yeah.
It's a girl.
Oh,
Yeah. So
dad of 2 girls? That is the best.
Right?
Let me tell you.
I think so too.
Yeah, because no matter what happens, you'll be taken care of in your life.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Right.
Like,
I heard a saying recently, I don't know how true it is,
yeah.
but I heard it goes something like, a son's your son until he finds a wife.
Yeah.
Your daughter is your daughter for life.
Oh, I believe that.
I don't know how true it is. Maybe it's not.
But I agree. I think, like, if you think about your own life,
Right.
I know for myself, we've actually moved to be closer to Rebecca's mom versus my parents. And so, but I can see that happening easily, right?
Yeah.
Where my sister would live closer, or has, not right now, but has lived closer to my parents than I have, or my brother. My brother's in like Manitoba or whatever now, right? So I think it is true,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is kind of an interesting thing. So,
Yeah.
but 2 girls, that's the best.
Yeah, we're very excited.
So how is your daily routines, and now having that family, how has that changed? Or how would you think it would be different if it was in Toronto versus being in Calgary? Because if there's more open spaces, there's more things to do. What would that look like differently, knowing what you knew life was like before compared to what life is like now?
I think in a lot of ways, our lives wouldn't be very different. It wouldn't be a drastic difference because, well, we would still have a family. We might have been living in a smaller space because that's what we can afford, but we would still be having our kids.
Yeah.
And so in terms of our day-to-day routine, we would still be working remote jobs, for instance, right? And so we would still be raising our daughter at this stage. So I would say like 80% of the things or 70% of the things would remain the same. But it's the other 30% that makes a huge difference, right? Things like, well, I know what I'm not doing is being stuck in traffic, for instance, right? When I go to buy stuff or let me go out for whatever outdoor activities, like Kushbu was saying, whether we go biking, we take our bikes in our car out to the mountains or whatever. There's that much less traffic, that many more activities to do, I think. Living in the GTA was actually not too bad, but I still have some family there, and it's changed over the past couple of years. At least that's what I hear. In terms of the number of people has gone way up.
Yeah.
So traffic has worsened in a lot of the major highways, and just crime rates have gone up, and so. Yeah, I mean, I don't think any city is immune to these things, but I think it hits particularly hard in a place like Toronto because, well, that's where everyone just wants to be in, right?
And everyone's on top of each other. Like,
Yeah.
Even in Calgary, I've felt it like the last year, even 6 months. Just the energy, like people are short-tempered.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine living in a place where people are more on top of each other versus out.
Yeah.
With that happening too. And I've just sensed that, like when you're driving, when you're in malls or whatever, like people are just more short-tempered for some reason.
Yeah.
And that's probably a good thing to have a little bit more land space between everybody.
There's a funny story, recently I was reading on the news about all the carjackings in the GTA area and the suburbs there, especially like Brampton and Mississauga and places like that. And I was telling Kushbu that not too long ago, I was getting groceries out of our car here on our driveway, and I had both my hands full. And so I left the doors open thinking I'll come back and close them. but I forgot the doors of our car open all night, and our garage was open all night. I only remembered in the morning when I went out. And yeah, I don't think that would have been possible.
Everything was fine.
Everything was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
And so
I've left our garage door open, and you've got bikes and cars.
Exactly.
Even the door into our house was unlocked.
yeah,
right? Like things like that.
Pretty much.
Like it's
So I was just telling her what a difference it is. Like, and you know, it might not always be this way.
No.
But at least for now it was. So we were grateful to be here.
But that also changes your feeling of security.
Yeah.
Right? Because you do probably feel safer versus on edge.
Yeah.
And so that can also bring, you know, just some, let's call it longevity of life.
Yeah.
Right? It's less stress.
Yeah, exactly.
Which could be a good thing too.
When we were actually looking for communities here in Calgary in which to buy, one of the markers for safety, like a visual marker, would be kids playing unsupervised in the neighborhood.
Smart.
And if we see that, then that gives us an indication that, you know, it's a generally safer neighborhood where parents feel comfortable letting their kids out. And even now, like, I know today was a snow day, but we've had some pleasant days in the last week. And so we see kids just all around our neighborhood unsupervised. And that to me shows that, you know, it's a generally considered to be a safe neighborhood.
Well, either you're surrounded by safety or just really bad parenting.
or bad parenting, yeah.
One or the other.
But yeah, I mean, you can think that maybe one or two bad parents might be around, but not everyone.
Not everybody.
Yeah, right.
So if you were to move to Calgary again, what would you do differently?
It's a good question. Would you do anything differently?
I think when we moved, we hadn't put too much thought into what buying a home in Calgary looks like, because we just assumed how it is in Toronto is how it's going to be in Calgary. The fact of understanding like how many offers would be there, what homes would be available, what should we look at. I think we might have done a little more research just to feel that we were prepared. Our experience with Rebecca was fantastic because I could just blindly trust her and be like, okay, I have done no research, but I trust what you're saying is 100% accurate. But it still included a lot of like second thoughts of like, is this okay? Is this too fast? Is this too slow? So I think we would have done that differently. But outside of that, I think most of our decisions would have been the same in terms of like how quickly we moved here, how quickly we purchased a house, and the neighborhoods that we looked at, and then the final home that we purchased in the neighborhood. Yeah.
I think the one thing I would do differently was move here sooner. Yeah. Other than that, no.
Were you aware of the option of moving to Calgary, before COVID happened?
Not really, because it was only in 2020.
Yeah.
In the summer of the fall of 2020, that one of my closest friends moved here.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I came to visit him that fall of 2020. So it was right in the middle of COVID. I came to visit him for a couple of weeks. And I came twice, actually, within like a 3-month period for 2 weeks each time.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was like, okay, well, this is actually a decent place in which to live. And so I went back home to Toronto, what was then home, and I reported back to her saying that, you know, where else we can go is Calgary. So let's check that out.
Yeah, I think that was a very pivotal moment for a lot of people.
Yeah.
In realizing what the unaffordable options they have in the larger cities, as well as what can be done about it, right? Either you move, and that was the big conversation 2 years ago. Either you move 3-4 hours away, or you move 4 hours of a flight away.
Yeah,
like it's
the same.
What do you do?
Right? Yeah.
I mean, you have to go through security, but other than that, that's the only difference, right?
Yeah.
And so it is interesting because we still are seeing people making that move or trying to figure out that affordability.
Yeah.
For some, they've been waiting and saving, and now they can do it. And there's still that real big FOMO, fear of missing out of like opportunities because of prices that are going up and things that are happening right in the city. But would you still recommend for people to move if they're considering it, even though prices have gone up? from when you purchased, would you, if for some reason had to delay it a year or two, would you still make that move?
I think we would. Yeah. If we had to delay it, if we had to buy in the current market, we would. I mean, obviously it's a lot more competitive now with, low inventory and things like that, but we would still do it.
Yeah.
I think because a lot of our reasons for moving here remain unchanged.
Right.
Even if we wait 2 more years, we still wanted to have a bigger space for our family. We still wanted a quieter place to live. And so those things wouldn't have changed. I mean, our budget might have changed based on the current market, and we might have, bought at higher interest rates and maybe have bought a smaller property or something like that. But the end result would still have been us moving out here.
And you're getting into the market.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now that you've been here, and now that you kind of not only have explored your community, but I'm sure you've explored others and parks and neighborhoods and places. What are some of the places, neighborhoods, top of mind that you look at and you're going, I would have totally been okay to live there as well. You don't have to tell everyone where you live. Oh, yeah. Because that's a little bit too close to home. But what are other neighborhoods that you kind of just think that you're like, oh, I totally would have moved here?
Yeah.
Well,
what's the one with the lake?
There's so many with the lakes.
And up north?
No,
it's down south.
It's
southeast.
in the south.
Yeah. So we really liked Legacy, Mahogany, Auburn Bay, kind of that area, Seton.
Yep.
And I tell Kush because sometimes I'll go down there still to pick up a piece of furniture or whatever from Marketplace, right? And so I tell her that, you know what, every time I visit the southeast, I would totally be okay living here.
Yeah.
I know it's further out from, some of the benefits that we get living in the northwest is just closer proximity to the mountains and stuff like that. But other than that, I think the southeast is a really good place.
And now that the ring road is actually open,
exactly,
it's not that much different.
Yeah, it's not that different.
You can get out quick.
Yeah. And so that kind of quadrant is definitely where I would be totally okay with. Yeah.
Any other communities? Place in New
Yeah, there are some communities south of where we are, so in the southwest, but those are kind of on the pricier side.
So kind of like your Aspen, up on the hill.
Yeah. There,
it's a nice area.
It is.
It's probably one of the pricier parts of the city.
Yeah,
right.
It is.
So what's interesting is Southeast used to be the most affordable part of the city. Actually, that's not true. Northeast was, and then Southeast. So outside of the Northeast, Southeast, Southwest, Northwest, Southeast was the most affordable. But over the last number of years, it's actually kind of caught up to other price points because there's more people who still don't need to go downtown and they're working from home, doing different things. And so they don't need that proximity. And that's why the Northwest was higher priced, is because I can jump on Crow Child and get to downtown within 15 minutes if I need. Yeah. But then you have the west part of the city, which was even pricier because, again, proximity to downtown. And so it's interesting as all of this happens because when everyone moved here, when you guys moved here first, you artificially, you're us now.
Yeah.
But all of you, when you moved here, you artificially inflated the suburban prices where inner city didn't jump. And now it's it's balancing itself out. And what has historically happened in Calgary is prices increase inner city first, and then it brings the suburbs with it. And then if properties are decreasing, suburbs drop first, and then inner city goes down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it feels like we're getting back to that rhythm because for a couple of years it was so inflated on the outskirts of the city. But I think it's also propped it up a little bit more too, which is not a bad thing, but it's just an interesting thing that happened during that whole time. Because of your exact reason. Like all of those areas, they're great areas and they're beautiful. And again, there's no lake communities other than Arbor Lake up north.
Yeah, exactly.
But because we're so hilly up here in the north, and we're in the northwest now, but that's why it's so much hillier, but you have so many more lake options down south. Yeah. I want to leave you with this question, leave all of you with this question. What advice would you give to other families or couples like you were when you were making this change, saying, I'm going to grow, I want to have a family, we're going to figure this out, we want more space. What advice would you have given yourself or others that are in that same situation?
One thing I would say is, especially if you've not already started a family, if you're thinking about it, be willing to take more risks. There are definitely risks involved with moving, right? You have your job securities. Not everyone works remotely. And so you might have to quit your job where you're required to go in, and you might have to look for something else. But I think, especially if you don't have kids already, this is something I would tell myself, my previous self, is that be a bit more courageous and take some risks, because the rewards might be pretty huge, right? A lot of people like to stay in their comfort zone and not take those risks, and maybe not quit the job and go and look for another job. And sometimes it's not even possible, depending on what kind of industry they're in. So obviously this isn't like a one-size-fits-all kind of advice, but if it does apply to you, if you can maybe switch jobs, if there are jobs available, so for example, we were in the tech industry. And so even if you have a job that requires you to go into work, you might still be able to find a remote job that has equally or better pay.
Yeah.
Right. And so, just be a bit more courageous and take that risk.
And also just knowing your priorities. Because again, like Vineet said, like people tend to get very comfortable. But then when you have a family or are thinking of starting a family, things like what is the culture of the city? How are the people? How family friendly are things? The kind of activities that you get, the kind of schools and the schooling options that you get. Like if those remain your priorities, then it becomes much easier to make that decision.
So I'm going to ask you the question that you just said.
Yeah.
So what risks are you guys wanting to take in the next couple of years? Because if taking a risk is that important, what's something you're willing to jump into?
Well, okay, so I've been considering investing in a kind of any kind of business. I've been looking into it. I'm still, open in terms of what I want to get my feet into, but that might be something that I want to do.
Do you feel like moving and changing your physical space has allowed you to kind of think differently?
I think so. Because in Calgary, what I've found is, and we've both noticed this, there's a lot of small businesses.
Yes.
Right? And again, maybe, I'm sure there are in the GTA as well. Maybe it's just where we were at the time, inner city or like Midtown Toronto or downtown Toronto for her.
Corporate.
Yeah, very corporate. We were mostly surrounded by people who work at a company, who work at a job.
Yeah.
Not many people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas now we're in the suburbs. Maybe that's the reason why, that we're surrounded by a lot more small businesses like landscaping companies and all these, contracting businesses. And so I think that definitely has given me a bit of a mind shift in that direction. So in terms of risk taking, I want to, like we both want to start generating passive income now that we have a family. I want to prioritize time with the kids over having to, sacrifice my time for an income.
And that's part of taking the risk too. When someone is willing to take that risk, Calgary is so much more open to those who are wanting to be more entrepreneurial versus forcing yourself into the corporate world, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's refreshing in some ways, because I feel sometimes that corporate equals stuffiness where entrepreneurial feels real. And that could be just because we're doing it ourselves. Yeah. But it's like real people versus, playing a show or putting on a show, right? Yeah. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time. This has been wonderful. I hope you have found this to be very, very helpful. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I know these guys are totally open to responding because some of you have also reached out before, asked questions, and they were very willing to tell you how to move their car from Toronto to Calgary last time. So if you have any questions,
go ahead. And if this has been helpful, you can head up to this video here because we got a lot more for you over there.